Howdy folks, and welcome back to Elite Dangerous with Commander Jingles. So, I'm plotting a journey that's going to take me at least 5,000 light years away. I'm not going anywhere in particular, it just has to be a minimum of 5,000 light years away from my career start point. Don't worry, I'm not going all the way to Colonia, that's 22,000 light years. Well, actually, I am going to go to Colonia, just not today. I figured I'd plot a route to Colonia and then stop about a fifth of the way there. Well, more like a quarter of the way there. And that would do. I'm not looking for any one place in particular, just some place that's 5,000 light years away. And the reason I'm going to all of this trouble is because Marco Quent needs to die in a fire. Not a big fan of Marco Quent. He, of course, is engineer number 3 from Fox's step-by-step guide to unlocking all of the engineers in the game, or at least the ones that are worth unlocking, as quickly and efficiently as possible. It's an old Reddit post, link in the video description, but it is still relevant and it still works. Marco Quent is a colossal pain in the arse because, well, there are any number of reasons. First, he doesn't actually offer any engineering upgrades that you can't get a lot easier and done better by other engineers elsewhere. But you kind of need to go through Marco Quent to get to those other engineers. Also, he requires payment in 25 units of modular terminals. And modular terminals are not a commodity that you can just go to an orbital station and buy on the commodity market. They're the kind of thing that only get given away as mission rewards. Very rarely. Also, he exists in the Sirius system, which is a closed system that you cannot access without a permit, which means that there's a reputation grind with the controlling faction of that system in order to get close enough to Marco to give him the 25 modular terminals that you've harvested by grinding out missions over and over and over until a mission with a modular terminal reward came up. Like I said, Marco Quent needs to go and die in a fire. But why the 5,000 light year journey? Well, one of those good engineers that you get access to from Marco Quent requires that you've travelled 5,000 light years away from your career start point. So this is it's kind of a case of killing two birds with one stone. Plus, we're going to need that exploration data. So, 150 jumps and 5,048 light years later, I find myself at my destination, in the middle of the arse end of nowhere, looking to plot the return journey. Now, you need to make sure that you honk each system with your discovery scanner as you arrive, and while you're refueling, if it's a star that you can refuel from. And if you come across a system that has a particularly large number of orbital bodies, it's a good idea to make sure you get scans of each of them, because that's an absolute goldmine of astronomical data. Having done that, after 150 jumps, I have to plot another 150 or so jumps and another 5,000 or so light years back the way I came. Although not exactly back the way I came, because we're not heading back to Elvira Marduk in the Kuhn system, we're done with her. Instead, I'm plotting a course to the Procyon system, because there are some people there who are going to be very interested in all the data that I've got, and they're going to help me on the next stage of this journey. So, next stop, Procyon, a mere 5,120 light years away. 'Tis but a scratch. But then something at least interesting happened on the way back. So I've just jumped into the Col 359 sector whatever system and almost shit my pants after being confronted with this for the very first time. That, kids, is a neutron star. It is very, very pretty. And it's also very, very dangerous. Neutron stars are very, very small remnants of collapsed supergiant stars. And when I say very, very small, I mean it. That thing is probably about 30 kilometers across. It's comprised almost entirely of neutrons, hence the name. Despite its tiny size, it still has most of the mass of the star that it used to be. Let's take a closer look at its details in the system view. There it is. So that thing, despite not even having a millionth of the size of our Sun, has more than half of the mass. Packed into an area about 30 kilometers across. This one has a surface temperature of about 600,000 Kelvin, so it's kind of warm. And that much mass packed into such a small area means that if you were to take a matchbox-sized sample of the material that makes up the substance of that neutron star, it would probably weigh around about 3 billion tons. Neutron stars typically have magnetic fields that are anything between 100 million to 1 quadrillion times more powerful than the Earth's magnetic field. The surface gravity of that tiny little thing is something in the order of 200 billion times that of Earth's. As it formed, as its core collapsed, thanks to the, well, something that's called the conservation of angular momentum, meant that it started to rotate faster and faster, and right now is probably spinning a couple of hundred times a second. And those beams of blue energy that you could see being emitted from the poles, those are concentrated bursts of electromagnetic radiation, primarily X-rays. Now here's the thing. That can be very useful, because if you have a ship that's equipped with a fuel scoop and you fly through those bursts of X-rays, it will supercharge your frameshift drive, giving you a 300% boost to your jump range. This, in Elite, is what they call cruising the Neutron superhighway. The problem is, if you fuck it up, it will kill you. And I'm only 880 light years and 21 jumps away from Procyon. And if I die out here because I screw up this neutron star jump, I will lose all of the navigational data that I collected. Not just on the 5,000 light year journey out, but on the 4,120 light year journey back this far. Is it really worth the risk? No. It's clearly not worth the risk. But I'm going to do it anyway. I mean, my thought process at the time was, look, if I get it and I do it, it's going to be great for YouTube. If I fuck it up, it's still going to be great for YouTube. So I'm going to go for it. However, I did do my homework. There is another elite YouTuber who goes by the name of Down to Earth Astronomy. He's from Denmark, and he is very, very good. And he produced a video guide on how to successfully supercharge your frameshift drive by flying through those X-ray bursts being emitted from the poles of neutron stars. So I'm following his instructions. First, you line yourself up on the star itself, and you approach it very, very slowly. You definitely don't want to fly into the star's exclusion zone, because that will dump you out of supercruise and into real space, and that would be bad. Remember, these things are incredibly hot. Once you get about this far away, and I am being ultra cautious here because this is my first time, you don't actually need to be as cautious as this. Not with a neutron star anyway. They're actually reasonably forgiving. There's a large margin for error with a neutron star. Because they have such a small exclusion zone around them, you have to get extremely close to a neutron star to actually hit that exclusion zone and have your drive disrupted. Not so with a white dwarf, which you can also use to plot a neutron superhighway jump. White dwarfs are fucking evil. They have massive exclusion zones, and it's extremely difficult to hit this jet cone without actually getting your drive interrupted. In fact, we are in. Okay. The reason we're going so slowly is because we need to stay inside this cone until we get that message, frameshift drive supercharged. If I was going any faster, I'd be straight in one end of the cone and straight out of the other before the drive getting supercharged. As soon as you get that message, that's when you throttle up to get clear, because when you're inside that cone, your ship is uncontrollable. And we're good. So my engine has now been supercharged by 300%, so I can now do a 157 light year jump to the next system on my way to Procyon. Also, another reason why white dwarfs can go and fuck themselves is not just because they're incredibly dangerous to try to plot a jump with, but they only give you a 50% boost to your jump range. So fuck white dwarfs. Neutron stars for the win. But I managed to pull it off without, you know, killing myself spectacularly. Sorry to disappoint everyone. And the next completely forgettable system on my route is 152 light years away. That's not bad going for a mostly unengineered Asp Explorer. I'll tell you what though, while it's definitely going to be worth it as we stop to enjoy the sights in this trinary system, this journey has beaten the hell out of my ship. At the very least, I'm going to need to get the paintwork looked at. Look at the state of that. I don't know though, I kind of like it. It looks beaten up and used, because it is beaten up and used. But it looks a lot more Star Wars than it does Star Trek, doesn't it? There was, however, one further surprise waiting for me on the way back to Procyon. Just a couple of jumps out. I mean, we're talking 3 jumps away from Procyon. This happened. That, kids, that's a white dwarf. Or if we're going to be absolutely precise, that's a DA-type star. Now, it's actually a double neutron jump from here. I jump from this white dwarf to another white dwarf and then on to Procyon, getting only a 50% boost to my jump range from each white dwarf, however. So if I wasn't using the white dwarfs to give a small boost to my frameshift drive, it would actually only be 3 jumps from here to Procyon. Now at this point I don't know just how dangerous white dwarf stars are. I've just done a successful neutron star jump, so this should be no different, right? Not right. In fact, very wrong, as I'm about to find out the hard way. The technique in theory is exactly the same. Just approach the star straight on. Careful not to cross into the star's exclusion zone and then start banking off into the jet cone, supercharge your frameshift drive, and Bob's your mother's brother. The difference is the size of the exclusion zone around a white dwarf is considerably bigger than the size of an exclusion zone around a neutron star. You've got a big margin for error with a neutron star. When I was doing this on the previous jump, I was within 4 light seconds of the neutron star before I even started peeling away to get into the jet cone. If you get within 4 light seconds of a white dwarf, this shit happens. And these things are rather warm. Not as warm as a neutron star, but they're bigger, so you don't have to be as close to feel the effects. And of course, because I've been violently pulled out of Super Cruise, my frameshift drive is experiencing a cooldown while it reboots, so yikes. And at 430 meters per second, I'm not going to be getting away from it very fast. I have to wait for the frameshift drive cooldown to cycle. So, white dwarf stars can go and die in the same fire as Marco Qwent. So while we're waiting for my engine to cycle, and I plot a course that doesn't involve jumping through white dwarf stars, which is actually only going to add 1 extra jump to my journey, so this was a pointless waste of time anyway. Here's a couple of facts about white dwarf stars that you might not know. White dwarfs have no source of energy, because there's no fusion going on inside them. And because there's no fusion, there's no source of pressure created by the heat generated by the fusion to stop the star from collapsing in on itself. In fact, the only thing that stops a white dwarf from collapsing in on itself is the pressure caused by the electrons within the star degenerating. So, no fusion, no heat being generated. This means that while white dwarfs are extremely hot when they form, they can't do anything other than cool down over time. Over a very long period of time, the material making up the star will start to cool down and crystallize, starting with the core and working its way outwards. Which means that the ultimate fate of every white dwarf in the universe is to eventually cool down to a point where it's no longer given off any heat or light, and instead just becomes a crystallized lump of carbon, known as a black dwarf. The problem is, calculated that the length of time it will take for this to happen is far longer than the 13.8 billion years that it's been estimated that the universe has actually existed. So, theoretically at least, black dwarfs are a thing, we just haven't been around long enough for one to happen yet. Welcome to the Procyon system, the brightest star in the Canis Minor constellation and one of Earth's closest stellar neighbours, being only 11.46 light-years away from Sol. It's a binary system with a main sequence white star and, would you believe it, Procyon b, another white dwarf. What are you doing in the Procyon system, Jingles? Well, we're not sightseeing. The reason we're here is in order to unlock access to Marco Qwent, as well as his 25 modular components, whatever the hell they are, we also first have to gain access to the Sirius system where he lives, and the Sirius system is a permit-locked system. It's a private star system owned by the Sirius Corporation. And the only way to get the permit that will allow us to access the Sirius system so we can actually go and see Marco Qwent is to kiss the arse of the Sirius Corporation until they give us the permit. But how do we do that if we can't get into the Sirius system? Well, the Sirius Corporation actually has a presence outside of the Sirius system, and they are in fact the controlling faction of the Cormac Hub orbital in the Procyon system, and that's why we're here. Now, in the normal course of events, you'd probably arrive here at Cormac Hub in the Procyon system, start taking missions for the Sirius Corporation from the mission board, and eventually you'd increase your reputation with them to the level where they would issue the permit for the Sirius system. But we're not going to have to do that, because we've just completed a 10,000 light-year round journey, honking our discovery scanner through every system along the way and gathering all sorts of extremely valuable astronavigational data. Now, when you dock at a station or make landfall at a planetary outpost and access the cartographics office in order to sell that data, the data that you sell increases your reputation with whoever the controlling faction is. And the Sirius Corporation is the controlling faction here at Cormac Hub. Now, I'm not going to sell all of my cartographic data here. I don't need to. I just need to sell enough of it to raise my reputation with the Sirius Corporation to Allied, so they'll give me that ticket that I need. And the remainder of the data I'm going to keep in my back pocket because I can always use it to raise my reputation elsewhere. After you've dumped enough data into the cartographics office, you'll find this waiting for you on the mission board. There it is. From the Sirius Corporation, Permit Acquisition Opportunity. And that's it. That's the ticket to the Sirius star system. So we're going to go ahead and accept that, because it's taken us 10,000 light years to earn it. And while taking on the mission makes it look like, oh great, we've got another hoop to jump through, that's not actually the case. You'll see that there's a message waiting for you, and there it is. Sirius system permit issued. So, hooray! We're off to see Marco Qwent at last. Yeah, not quite. There are other boxes that we need to check first, not least of which are the 25 modular components that Marco Qwent is going to be expecting us to deliver. But we also have all of that astronavigational data burning a hole in our pocket, so we're going to plot a course to the 78 Ursae Majoris system, and we're going to turn in the remainder of that astronavigational data to any station controlled by the Alioth Independents. This has nothing to do with Marco Qwent, by the way. We're just killing two birds with one stone. The Alioth Independents are a faction that are going to be critical for securing the services of another engineer further on down the line, and since I have all of this astronavigational data, and it's very, very useful for increasing reputation with factions very quickly, in the same way that I did with the Sirius Corporation back in the Procyon system, rather than spending hours and hours and hours running missions for them via the station's mission board, I'm just dumping my data in their cartographics office. And getting paid into the bargain, so it's all good. Once you've done this, you're going to want to make sure that your ship has a bare minimum of 30 tons of cargo space. The reason for this is because you're going to need to be carrying 25 tons of modular components for Marco Qwent, and the leftover cargo space is so you can stock it up on any cheap commodity. It really doesn't matter which one. We're not talking about making a profit trading here. Just buy something cheap and plentiful and top up the remainder of your cargo hold with it. And then from here on in, every time you land at a new station, go to the commodities market and sell 1 ton of that spare cargo, and then top it up again with something equally cheap and plentiful at that station's commodity market. It doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter whether you make money or lose money, you're trading such small quantities it's completely irrelevant. What's important is that you're trading at new markets, because guess what? this is also going to be a requirement for another engineer further down the line. Meanwhile, dumping the remainder of all of this cartographics data has increased my reputation with the Alioth Independents in particular to allied, and the Alliance as a whole, that's the faction that aren't the Federation or the Empire, to friendly, which is exactly what we need for them to offer me the permit to access the Alioth system, which is where the engineer Bill Turner lives. But we'll be dealing with him much, much later. We're just, well, laying the groundwork really in as efficient a manner as we possibly can. So there's the Alioth system permit awarded. Not that we actually need it right now. So now it's Marco Qwent, yeah? Well, not quite. Remember, we still need 25 modular terminals. And modular terminals aren't something that you can just buy on a station's commodity market. They're something that will only ever get offered to you as a mission reward. And there's little that's more frustrating than seeing 15 of the 25 modular terminals that you need being offered as a mission reward from a faction that you don't actually have enough reputation with to accept the mission in the first place. So, where do we know where we get a shit ton of missions and that we can cycle very, very quickly, increasing the chances that a modular terminal mission is going to pop up with a bunch of factions that I'm already allied with? It's back to the Nagalan and Mainani systems, where we did that Empire rank grind all those weeks ago, and that is where we're going to be continuing in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.